My name's Kyle, and I'm 28 now, but this story starts when I was around 22. Back then, I thought my family would always have my back, no matter what. I grew up in a pretty average middle-class household. Me, my older brother Evan, and our parents. Evan was the golden child from the start. He was charming, quick-witted, the type of guy teachers and coaches loved. Meanwhile, I was the quieter one, the one who didn't make waves but never really got noticed either. It didn't bother me much growing up. I figured that's just how things were. Not every family is perfectly balanced, right? But as we got older, the gap between Evan and me got a lot wider. By the time he was 25, Evan had this shiny job at a prestigious firm downtown, drove a brand new BMW, and posted pictures every weekend of himself at rooftop bars with other people who looked like they'd just stepped out of a magazine. My parents couldn't stop bragging about him. Every family gathering turned into an Evan highlight reel. And me? I was working my way through college, juggling 2 part-time jobs, barely keeping my head above water. They loved Evan's polish. They tolerated my scrappiness. Despite all that, I still admired him, stupidly. I genuinely believed he had it all figured out, and I guess deep down, I wanted him to be proud of me too. That's probably why, when he asked if I could help him with a little problem at work, I agreed without thinking twice. The little problem turned out to be anything but. Evan had been messing around with some confidential client files. Nothing malicious, just stupid arrogance and carelessness, and he needed someone to help him fix it before anyone higher up noticed. I was studying IT security back then, so he figured I could cover his tracks. I was hesitant, really hesitant, but he guilt-tripped me hard, playing the "we're brothers, you owe me" card. And honestly, I just didn't want to let him down. So I agreed. I snuck into his office late one night, logged into his computer, and did some digital housekeeping. I thought it was over. It wasn't. Not even close. About 2 weeks later, Evan got called into a meeting. Someone higher up had noticed something weird in the system logs, something that pointed directly to his terminal. Somehow, my cleanup job wasn't perfect. Evan was fired on the spot. No severance. No references. Nothing. He came home that night like a storm, slamming doors, throwing things around the house. I'll never forget it. He cornered me in the kitchen, his face red and twisted in a way I'd never seen before. "You ruined everything for me," he screamed, his voice cracking with rage. "You incompetent fool. I should have known better than to trust you with anything important." I stood there, stunned, the words hitting harder than I ever would have expected. Before I could even process what was happening, he stormed out, slamming the door behind him so hard a picture fell off the wall. The next few days were a blur. I figured, okay, he's mad. He'll cool off. We'll talk. Maybe it would even bring us closer somehow, like brothers who've been through something. But that hope died quickly. I started getting cold, clipped texts from my parents. Then the calls stopped altogether. Then the invitations to family dinners stopped coming. It wasn't just distance, it was total cutoff. Like I didn't exist. I finally cornered my mom on the phone after a week of trying. Her voice was icy. "I can't believe you would sabotage your own brother's career out of jealousy," she said. "You need to get help, Kyle." I felt the ground shift under my feet. I tried explaining, tried telling her the truth, but she just kept cutting me off. "Save it. Evan told us everything." Turns out Evan hadn't just been angry, he'd been methodical. He told them I had intentionally messed with his files because I was jealous of his success, that I wanted to drag him down so I could feel better about my own failures. It was such a ridiculous lie, but the worst part was they believed him without question. The months that followed were the loneliest of my life. No family birthdays, no holiday invitations, no random texts from cousins. I buried myself in school, took extra shifts at work, kept my head down. I told myself I didn't care, but the truth was, every time a holiday rolled around, it hit me like a truck. Meanwhile, Evan was busy rebuilding his life. He got a new job, lower status, but still respectable. He started dating a woman named Heather who was just as polished and perfect as him. They got engaged after a year, with engagement photos plastered all over social media. Everyone gushed about how happy they were, how Evan deserved all the good things coming to him after everything he'd been through. Every photo, every comment, felt like a slap in the face. I thought about clearing my name so many times. I even drafted long emails, point-by-point breakdowns of what really happened. But every time, I chickened out. Some part of me still clung to the hope that maybe they'd realize the truth on their own. that maybe Evan would feel guilty enough to confess. Of course, he didn't. He was too busy polishing his perfect image. It wasn't until about 3 years later that fate handed me a lifeline I didn't even know I needed. I got a job offer from a mid-sized tech firm. Good salary, real benefits, my first real shot at stability. During my onboarding, I recognized a name on the leadership team, one of Evan's old colleagues from his first firm, the one where he got fired. I didn't think much of it at first, until one day, during a casual lunch with a few coworkers, someone brought up old office horror stories. My new boss chuckled and said, "Man, there was this one guy years ago. Brilliant on paper, but a total disaster. Thought he could outsmart the entire system. Ended up trying to blame his brother for covering his tracks when it all blew up. Crazy stuff." I froze, my sandwich halfway to my mouth. He didn't say Evan's name. He didn't have to. Later that night, I sat in my tiny apartment staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. This was it, the smoking gun I never thought I'd find. Proof from someone outside my family, someone neutral, someone credible. Proof that Evan's whole narrative was a lie. For the first time in years, the anger that I had tried so hard to bury started burning again, hotter and sharper than ever. I had spent so long swallowing the betrayal, convincing myself it wasn't worth fighting back. But now I realized it wasn't about revenge. It was about finally reclaiming the part of me that Evan had stolen. I started planning, carefully, methodically, the way Evan had lied about me years ago. I wasn't going to confront him privately. No, I was going to wait for the perfect moment. One where the entire family could see the truth for themselves, where there would be no room for lies or damage control. And that moment came faster than I expected. It was at Evan's engagement party, a huge, lavish affair at some rented event space downtown, with all the family and extended friends packed into one sparkling room. I hadn't been invited, of course, but my cousin, bless her, secretly texted me the time and location. She didn't believe Evan's story either, but had been too scared to speak up. As I stood outside the venue that night, clutching a flash drive with everything I needed, my heart hammered so loudly I thought people nearby might hear it. Part of me still wanted to turn around, to let sleeping dogs lie. But then I pictured Evan's smug smile, my parents' cold disappointment, all the birthdays and holidays spent alone. No, it was time. I walked up to the doors, took a deep breath, and stepped inside. And right as I made my way through the crowd, I locked eyes with Evan, who went pale the moment he saw me. That's when everything started unraveling. For a second, the entire room seemed to freeze. Evan's eyes widened like he was staring at a ghost. His fiancée, Heather, glanced between us, confused. A few relatives noticed the sudden tension too and started whispering behind their hands. But Evan, ever the master of appearances, quickly slapped on a wide, fake smile and crossed the room toward me like we were long-lost friends. "Kyle," he said, voice a little too loud, too forced. "Didn't expect to see you here, buddy." He tried to clap me on the back, but I shifted away just enough to make it obvious. I smiled back, small, calm. "Yeah, funny thing. I figured tonight would be the perfect time to clear the air." Evan's face twitched. Just a flicker. But it was enough. Heather stepped forward, looping her arm through Evan's. "You must be Kyle. I've heard. Well, I've heard a lot about you." She laughed nervously. "Glad you could make it." There was a microphone set up near the bar for speeches later. My palms were sweating, but I kept walking toward it, my shoes echoing sharply in the fancy hall. Conversation started dying down as more people noticed. Evan hissed under his breath, "Kyle, don't." "Not here." I picked up the mic, tapped it once. Feedback squealed for a second, making a few guests wince. "Sorry, everyone," I said, my voice carrying through the room. "I know I'm not technically on the guest list, but if you could give me just a minute, I'd appreciate it. I promise it's important." The room stilled, curious now, slightly uncomfortable. Evan was frozen about 10 feet away, his smile rigid, his hands clenched. I pulled the flash drive from my pocket and held it up. 3 years ago, I began, keeping my voice even, steady. I was cut off from this family because of something my brother told you all. He said I sabotaged him out of jealousy, that I ruined his career. Murmurs rippled across the room. Evan's parents, my parents, stood near the front, staring at me with a mix of confusion and growing alarm. I stayed silent, I continued, because I thought maybe someday the truth would come out on its own. But it didn't. So here we are. I walked over to the laptop connected to the big projector screen set up for the engagement slideshow and plugged in the flash drive. A few seconds later, an email popped up, an internal memo from Evan's old firm, anonymously leaked to me by my new boss. It detailed the investigation, the firing, and most importantly, it stated explicitly that Evan had tampered with files himself and tried to shift the blame onto a relative with limited access to company systems. I clicked through slowly, letting the words sink in. I heard gasps. One of my aunts dropped her champagne glass. And just in case anyone thinks this could be faked, I added, pulling out a printed letter with a company seal. Here's a signed statement from the firm's legal department confirming it. I let the silence settle, heavy and choking. Evan surged forward finally, voice cracking. He's lying. He probably faked all of this. You can't believe this. He's bitter. He's been obsessed with ruining me. I turned to him slowly. Funny, Evan. That's exactly what you accused me of. Heather was staring at him now, her mouth slightly open. She looked at me, then back at Evan. Is it true? She whispered, but the mic still picked it up, projecting her words across the room. Evan sputtered, looking around wildly for backup. But the room wasn't on his side anymore. People were backing away. Some were shaking their heads. My parents looked shell-shocked, my mom clutching my dad's arm like she needed support to stay standing. I handed the mic back to the stand. That's all I wanted to say, I said. Thanks for listening. I turned and walked away without looking back, heart hammering but head high. I didn't stay to watch the aftermath, at least not in person. But the texts started pouring in within an hour. My cousin sent me a blurry photo of Evan slumped at a table, his perfect world crumbling around him, while Heather screamed at him in front of half the family. Another message came from my uncle. I'm so sorry, Kyle. We should have listened. By the next morning, Evan's engagement was called off. Half the family had blocked him. My parents left me a voicemail, my mom crying, begging me to come over so they could talk. I didn't answer. I wasn't ready for that yet. For the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't even realized I'd lost. Freedom. But even as I stared at my phone, watching the messages stack up, a part of me knew this wasn't the end. I spent the rest of that night sitting on the balcony of my apartment, the cool night air wrapping around me like a second skin. My phone buzzed over and over on the table next to me. Missed calls. Voicemails. Texts that started frantic, please call us, Kyle. And gradually grew more desperate, we need to explain. You don't have the full story. Come home. Home. What a joke. The truth was, home had stopped being home the day they believed Evan's lies without even hearing my side. Now, their sudden realization didn't feel like a warm welcome back. It felt hollow. Convenient. They didn't miss me, they missed the image of a family they could parade around at holidays. I ignored the calls for days. I buried myself in work, in late nights at the office, in coffee shop noise and crowded grocery stores where I could be just another anonymous face. Every time my phone buzzed, the knot in my stomach twisted tighter, but I refused to cave. I told myself they didn't deserve another piece of me. Not after everything. But then, about a week later, my cousin Mia showed up at my door. She stood there, soaking wet from the rain, clutching a Tupperware container and looking like she'd aged 10 years and 7 days. I didn't even think before letting her in. I know you probably don't want to see anyone, she said, voice shaky, but Mom said you haven't been answering. And I figured if I brought your favorite lasagna, you might at least listen. We sat at my tiny kitchen table while she spooned out soggy, steaming squares of lasagna onto chip plates. For a long time, we just ate in silence. Then she finally spoke. You should know, it's chaos over there, Mia said. After you left the party, Uncle Dave cornered Evan, and he cracked. Admitted everything. Said you owed it to him to take the fall. Said you were just the backup plan if he got caught. I swallowed a bitter laugh. Backup plan. That about summed it up, didn't it? Mia looked down at her plate, pushing the food around with her fork. Your mom's been crying nonstop. Your dad's, well, he's furious. Not at Evan. At himself. Says he should have known better. I didn't say anything. I couldn't trust my voice not to crack. They're planning a family dinner, Mia said, grimacing like the words themselves tasted sour. They want you to come. They want to apologize. Publicly. I stared at her, feeling nothing. No satisfaction. No glee. Just an empty, heavy sort of exhaustion. I'll think about it, I said finally. The truth was, I didn't know if I could go. What would it even fix? No apology would erase the years they abandoned me. No sorry would erase sitting alone on Thanksgiving or pretending Christmas didn't exist because I couldn't stand the pity from strangers. Still, curiosity gnawed at me. When the invite came a few days later, a formal, printed card, Like they thought fancy paper would make it more real. I almost threw it out. But something in me, something stubborn and sharp, refused to let Evan have the last word. I needed them to see, really see, who I'd become without them. That I wasn't some broken, bitter person living in their shadow. I needed them to realize they hadn't destroyed me, they had only freed me. So the night of the dinner, I dressed carefully. Sharp navy button-down, black slacks, clean, polished boots. I looked good, professional, confident, and for the first time, I felt it too. When I walked into the restaurant, a hush fell over the private dining room. Heads turned. I saw my parents sitting stiffly at the head of a long table, the rest of the family scattered awkwardly around them. Mia waved weakly from her seat. Evan sat farther down, slouched low in his chair, looking like he wanted to melt into the carpet. For a moment, I just stood there, letting them all see me. Not the loser Evan painted. Not the jealous little brother. Me. My mom rose first, wringing her hands. Kyle, sweetheart, thank you for coming. Please, sit, I'll stand, I said calmly, cutting her off. Her face crumpled a little, but she nodded. My dad cleared his throat. Kyle, we owe you the biggest apology of our lives. We were wrong. About everything. He stumbled through the words like each one weighed 100 pounds. My mom's voice broke halfway through hers, tears streaming down her face. A few aunts and uncles added their own apologies, some more sincere than others. And then, silence. Everyone turned to Evan. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. His once perfect hair was disheveled, his jaw unshaven. Heather was noticeably absent. He couldn't even meet my eyes. I'm sorry, Evan muttered finally, staring down at the tablecloth. For everything. It was pathetic. Half-hearted. A formality, not a reckoning. And somehow, seeing him like that, so small, so broken, didn't bring me the satisfaction I thought it would. I realized something in that moment. Evan had already lost everything that mattered. His reputation, his relationship, his family's trust. He was living in the wreckage of the lies he'd built, and it would follow him for the rest of his life. I didn't need revenge. I had already won. I straightened, slipping my hands into my pockets. Thank you for the apologies, I said evenly. But I'm not here to make everything go back to the way it was. That's not possible. My mom's face crumpled further. My dad looked down at his hands. Some of the relatives shifted uncomfortably. I'm not angry anymore, I continued. But I've built a life without you. A good one. I'm not interested in tearing it down to squeeze back into a family that didn't want me when it mattered. I let the words hang there, heavy and final. I wish you all the best, I added, meaning it more than I thought I would. Really? But I'm moving forward. Without you. And then, without waiting for a response, without giving them a chance to argue or beg, I turned and walked out. The cold night air kissed my face as I left the restaurant, but this time, it didn't sting. It felt cleansing, like I was finally walking out from under a heavy shadow that had been following me for years. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I drove home in silence. No music, no radio, just the low hum of the tires on the road. My mind wasn't racing the way I thought it would be. There was no second guessing, no pangs of guilt twisting in my chest. Just a steady, quiet certainty. I had said everything that needed to be said. When I got home, my phone was flashing again, missed calls, unread texts, voicemails stacking one after the other. I scrolled through them absently. Some were from my parents, more frantic now, some apologizing again, some begging me to come to Sunday dinner, just to talk. A few were from cousins, telling me they admired how I handled myself, saying they were proud of me. Even Mia sent a simple, "You did the right thing. I'm here if you ever want to hang out." And then there were Evan's messages. At first, they were short. "Kyle, please call me." Then longer. "I didn't mean for everything to go so far." Finally, pitiful. "I don't have anyone left. Please." I stared at the last one for a long time, feeling nothing. There was no anger, no triumph, just a detached kind of sadness, the kind you feel when you walk past a crumbling old house you used to love as a kid. You mourn what it used to be, but you know it's too far gone to save. I powered off the phone without answering and tossed it onto the couch. The next few weeks passed in a strange, almost surreal blur. I expected the guilt to creep in, the way it always used to when I stood up for myself. But it didn't. Instead, I found myself lighter, free in a way I had never been before. I started going out more, not to drink or party, but to really live. I signed up for a photography class I'd always wanted to try. I joined a weekend hiking group. I even reconnected with a few old friends I'd lost touch with while I was buried under the family drama. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't weighed down by the need to prove anything to anyone. It wasn't just my personal life that changed. Work thrived too. Without the constant emotional drain, I had more energy to focus on my career. A few months after the engagement party, I landed a major promotion, one that put me in charge of a small team. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine, earned through quiet perseverance and grit, not handed down through favoritism or backroom deals. One sunny Saturday morning, about 6 months later, I sat at a local park with Mia, sipping coffee and watching the dogs chase each other across the field. She had become one of the few family members I still spoke to, not out of obligation, but because she had proven she deserved a place in my life. I saw even the other day, Mia said casually, breaking the comfortable silence. I raised an eyebrow. Yeah, she nodded, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. He looks bad. Lost his job again. Word is, he's couch surfing between friends, but most people don't want him around. Apparently, Heather's family blacklisted him in their social circles too. I didn't feel any pleasure at the news. Just a quiet resignation. He did it to himself, I said simply. Mia studied me for a moment. You really don't hate him, do you? I thought about it. Really thought about it. No, I said finally. I don't. I just don't trust him. And I don't want him in my life. It's not hate. It's indifference. Mia smiled a little, like she was proud. That's real freedom, you know. Not caring enough to hate. We finished our coffee in peaceful silence, the sun warm on our backs. Time moved on, as it always does. The family kept trying to pull me back in, holiday invitations, group chats, polite emails. But I kept my boundaries firm. I sent polite declines, wished them well from a distance, and lived my life on my own terms. Over time, the invitations slowed. The texts became less frequent. Eventually, the desperate outreach faded into a dull, infrequent hum, background noise I barely noticed anymore. And somewhere along the way, I realized something important. Forgiveness isn't about letting people back into your life. It's not about pretending the hurt never happened or allowing yourself to be used again. It's about letting go of the anger so it doesn't chain you to the past. I forgave them, not because they deserved it, but because I deserved peace. One evening, about a year after the engagement party, I found myself standing on the balcony of my new apartment, a bigger, brighter place downtown that overlooked the river. The city lights shimmered below, the air humming with quiet life. I thought about the boy I used to be, the one who craved his brother's approval, who bent over backward to earn a place at a table that was never really set for him. He was gone. In his place stood a man who knew his own worth, who didn't need permission to live a full, vibrant life. A soft breeze tugged at my shirt as I leaned on the railing, smiling to myself. I wasn't angry. I wasn't broken. I was free. And for the first time in my life, that was enough.